Hey, what's up guys? This is Mr. Chris with Infotainment.com. We're here with our 2020 Jeep Wrangler once again, and we have the Mopar OEM auxiliary switches we're going to be installing today. So if you haven't installed these yet, or you're curious about the install, you're going to want to stay tuned. Alright, so before we begin, let me go over a few things here. You have your auxiliary switches, the pocket next to the auxiliary switches that'll mount right next to it. So if you have a elongated pocket, some various clips and connectors, a couple of nuts here. You do have some rivets. Now, for what Jeep recommends you do is remove your wheel well liner on the passenger side. I'm not going to do that, so I'm not going to be using these. You can refer to the instructions if you want to do it the official way, but I think I found a better way. It's a little easier. Heat shrink and a foam, like a foam tape. Your main wiring harness with relay box and fuses, as well as the instructions, is just a bunch of pictures. Not really going to help you too much if you're planning on doing this. Hopefully you find this video first. As far as the tools you'll need, Phillips screwdriver, 10mm socket, maybe a 10mm gear wrench. The things that are a little bit more specialty that you may not have on hand is a super long zip tie. If you don't have one, I love using this. Just go to Home Depot, get I think they're 3-foot zip ties. You cut the end off, and this is perfect for running all your wire. Maybe a pick and a really small flathead if you don't have. Some safety glasses and a set of gloves. This is when you're really going to find out if you cleaned your Jeep after your last off-road mission. All right, and lastly, I have a black pad that I'm going to use. You can use whatever you want, a towel, old shirt, what have you, for what I'm going to do with the hood. And then a cardboard, because you're going to be getting on your back for this install. So if you don't have a really nice garage floor like we do, you're going to want to put some cardboard down just so you can lay on the cardboard instead of your garage floor. All right, so with your hood in the up position, we're going to want to get a little bit more height out of this hood just so it's easier for us to work in there. So that's what that pad was for. I'm just going to set it up on top of the Jeep here, kind of right around in the center. And then I'll just lift the hood up and gently rest it up against the truck. And this hood prop, I like to just set it out of the way. It just makes it easy when you're putting the hood back to the normal position so you can grab it. It's like a handle. All right, so where we're going to start first is by putting this bracket in. This is the bracket that's going to hold your main relay harness. This basically sits right above your brake master cylinder. So you're going to have to pull this first 10mm nut off with the large washer attached. This is just going to sit right on top of there. And your kit will include 2 nuts. One of them is for here, and the other one is actually for your fuse box. So we'll tighten this down. And then the 2 nuts that are holding down your coolant reservoir, you want to pull those off and save those because we need those for the reinstallation. All we're going to do is move this out of the way slightly. So our main relay harness is going to mount on this furthest outside prong here. It'll clip into place, and we're going to run those wires along this plastic conduit here. And we're just going to zip tie it right to here, running across over to the passenger fuse box. All right, so grabbing your main relay harness here, the clip side that we're going to be using is literally the back side of this. So if you're reading the aux words in the right position, that's the top that you're going to be looking for. So that side right there, you're just going to slide in and it'll clip in place, to that outside clip. This inside one, if you try to put it there, it won't fit. So that one is just not used. Then you'll get your harness, just kind of loop it underneath there. And we'll drape it across the engine for now. Once we get the harness in place, we can set our coolant reservoir back down and reattach the 2 nuts that we took off earlier. So now that we got our bolt, you want to take a panel tool and just kind of push it in between this conduit cover. And that way, it'll allow you to run a zip tie right through there pretty easy. So you can zip tie this wire right up to this conduit cover. Pull that out. and we'll just work it all the way down, and we'll come back and cut those zip ties off. All right, once you get your main harness here secured with some zip ties, feed here with the 2 red wires on it, and the 2 ring terminals and the fuse, we're gonna attach this to the fuse box. But before we do that, we're gonna wanna disconnect the negative terminal of the battery, and we're gonna disconnect this negative terminal hub down here. So that is a couple of 10 mils. Once that's off, we can kind of set that out of the way. And same thing for down here. This all the way off. Some of you may have a 13 millimeter right next to it. Ours does not have that on our Jeep, so we just need to remove the 10 mil, push that out of the way. If you got a rag or something, you can also stick a rag in between here, just so you know that they're not going to make contact. And there's another 10 mil forward of the one that we just removed. We're going to have to pull this one off also, because this is where our ground in this harness is going to attach to. Now, you want to grab the 10 millimeter that was included with your kit, the 10 millimeter nut, and you're going to have an open post on your fuse panel. This is where we're going to slide these 2 ring terminals on. We'll attach it here. You'll need a deep socket 10 millimeter for that. I'm going to push that down there in between the fuse box and this plastic liner. That way it's out of the way and it kind of bends down with all the factory power wires there. Now you're going to be left with a short and long harness. Alright, so you're going to be left with a short and a long end harness here. The short one has a single ground wire ring terminal attached to it. This harness here is going to stay in your engine bay. These are going to be your main auxiliary feeds for the engine bay. The other end, the longer end, this is going to have to go into the interior of your Jeep. So you see you got a bunch of pins here, and you have 4 more auxiliaries. These are your interior auxiliaries, and you have 2 orange wires with some connectors at the end. All of this has to go inside the Jeep, so that's where the fun comes in. All right, so the shorter of the 2, you want to get kind of pushed down behind the fuse box here, tuck it up underneath that wire right there, and these will stay in your engine bay until you need to use them. Stuff that down on the side of the battery. All right, so this forward stud that we removed that nut from that was empty earlier, that's where the ground is going to be attached to. Oh, nice and secure, and leave the other grounds disconnected for now. We'll reattach everything after we're done with the install. Alright, so on the side here where your tire wheel is, this is where Mopar wants you to remove these rivets. This is why they include some rivets here. They want you to cut all these rivets off and pull the tire well liner out so you can access a grommet that's right inside here. You don't have to do that. If you don't mind laying on your back, you can actually pull the tire well in a little bit and you'll see the grommet perfectly fine from underneath. This is where you're going to need gloves, grab your eye protection, and something to lay on, and is cutting both sides of that grommet. So it's kind of like a balloon almost, if you're picturing a balloon. Wiring harness ran through it. So you're going to need to cut one side and the other side, and then you can feed your wire through that rubber balloon. That's what we're going to be doing. It's harder than it sounds. If you have an X-Acto knife or a precision knife, that'll work. A razor blade will work. You could even do it with a flathead, a small enough flathead, and just pierce that rubber. Basically, as long as you're able to feed that zip tie through to the other side, you're gonna be just fine. So let's get into that and show you how to get your zip tie through there. All right, so up inside the passenger side footwell, right below the glove box to the right of your kick panel. So this is your kick panel here. Right above, you have this pretty large grommet running into the firewall. I pre-cut that hole with a razor blade. That's basically what you want to do. Now this is double-sided, like I was trying to explain earlier. So you have a wall on this side that you need to penetrate, and the other side you need to do the same. The other side we're going to get from underneath the vehicle, and we're going to make a slice in this same rubber grommet just on the opposite end. Once we have a little slice, we can grab our zip tie and run our zip tie through, and once we get our zip tie through, we're going to be able to see it from underneath the vehicle inside that tire well. Alright, coming up from underneath the passenger side, you have your tire well liner here. See our tires right here. We have the inside of the Jeep's frame. You got a couple of ground wires here. If you look straight up, you'll see the bottom side of our fuse panel, and I believe this is the second battery on these Jeeps. But if you look right forward of there, you'll see that other end of that grommet. It's kind of way up there, but that's it right there. And I already pre-cut this side as well. So there is a hole. So all I'm gonna do is from the inside of the Jeep, I'm gonna push that zip tie through. It's gonna pop out on this end. And then from there, you can see a light. I'm just gonna run that zip tie straight up into our engine bay. So let's get into that. All right, so now that we have our cuts made in our grommets, we can go ahead and run our zip tie through the grommet, and we're gonna go from the outside in. You can go from inside out if you want. It doesn't really make a difference as long as you get that zip tie through there. Once you have this through, we can take the free end and run it up into the engine bay. All right, now we'll go back topside and show you the rest of the install. All right, now that we got our zip tie up into the engine bay here, you'll see it's kind of tight in there. There's not much room around that fuse box, but if you keep it kind of towards the rear of the vehicle or toward the rear side of that fuse box, that's where it has the most room to move in there. So from here, we'll grab our longer harness and we'll get the longer end, which has all the pins on it, and we'll tape this to our zip tie. And you want this taped really good because you don't want this wire popping off as you're running it, and then you're gonna have to do the zip tie through that grommet again. So make sure to get it nice and taped up. All right, and you can leave a flag on there so it makes it easy to pull that tape off. And I also have some interior or silicone protectant here. Interior detail, all kind of the same. You can lube that up a little bit. You can use glass cleaner, even just water, soapy water. They recommend grease. I don't necessarily like using grease because it gets kind of messy, but you're just trying to get this tape and wire through that grommet in there as smooth as possible. And also this bundle back here, we'll go ahead and throw some tape around here as well. All right, leave a little flag on there, and we should be ready to pull this through. All right, and before I yank on that zip tie, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna try and feed these wires down into that opening here, just so when I'm pulling, I don't get caught up on anything. It doesn't snag on something in the engine bay. All right, we'll pull that zip tie right through. All right, we'll pull our wires through, and it looks like our tape worked out pretty good. Our zip tie didn't pop off of there. All right, now we'll pull the tape off of our zip tie and we'll continue on to the next step. All right, now that we got our wires pulled to the inside, we need to remove the kick panel here. We also need to remove the glove box, and we have to pull off this HVAC controls and your media hub area. So we got to take all this stuff apart. So starting with your kick panel, this cover pulls straight back. We can pull off the door connector here. Basically, it's a paddle style connector. You depress the center down here. Paddle will push upwards, and that plug will come right out of there. And you should be able to slide this plug up and out, or you can pop it off. There's either or. Let's see which one I can get here. Might need a metal popping tool to pop that out. Yep, there you go. So yeah, on the back side, it's just a Christmas tree style pop, but it also will slide out of there. So if you push it, well, we'll leave that alone for now, but you can slide this up and out if you didn't want to take the pop out with it. Then on the inside, there is a 10mm nut that we have to pull off. And once we have that off, we can remove our kick panel by you just gotta kind of push it towards the inside of the vehicle. Actually, we'll pull this door harness completely off of the hook here. You should be able to pop it free. We actually have a prototype harness on here. So we have 2 extra plugs in here, and this is something that you won't have on your Jeep. All right, now that we got the kick panel exposed here, the harness that we need is this gray one right down here. So same thing like the door harness. It's a flip style plug that'll separate. And this side of the harness is the harness that we're gonna need. So this side of the plug is the plug that we're concerned with. And basically we need to access pin number 13 on this harness. And in the instructions, there's a pretty detailed of how to remove this little TPA thing here. This is a little, like a pin lock, as well as an image of pin number 13 and how to remove the pins, but we'll show you here. You basically have to pop this up. All right, so once you have this center red pin lock out, it's the 13th pin that you're gonna want to reference here, which is this orange wire. Again, in the instructions, we may put the image on the screen here, but it's basically the 13th pin is gonna be counting from the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the 5th pin over on this black section here with all the wires in it. So that 5th pin over from the left, you got this straight orange pin. Basically, from the other end, you'll count 5 over to the left. 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's this pin here. And actually, if you give it a nice push, you should be able to start to free it from there, yep, and pull it straight out of there. Now, you need this pin with the 2-part connector that comes in your kit. You're gonna have to take this pin and put it into the connector here. Showing you both sides of the connector. This would be the male end, this with this big protruding white piece in the center. This is where that pin that you removed out of this connector is going to go into. And according to the instructions, this pin will actually go onto the right side if you're looking at the back side of this connector, with the white portion aiming forward and the clip on top. This pin will slide into the right side. It's nice and secured in there. This clip will push itself and lock itself in when you connect it to the other end, or its mating connector. The side that's open or free, your kit comes with some blocks here to block that side out. You're gonna stick that in there, just like that. You don't have to worry about that side. Nothing goes in that side. The other end of the connector will actually get one of the 2 orange wires that is ran with your main harness into the vehicle that we just ran into the vehicle. So you'll see we have 2 different connectors here. One is long and straight, and the other one is short and stubby. This connector that will join up with its mate, this connector here, will get the long straight pin, and it'll obviously go to the side that has the wire in it. Now we can plug these 2 together, just like that. And the other white pin, pin block, slide it into the other end there, so they match. So when it's all plugged together, it should look like this. The wires should be matching on either side. If it's not matching, you did it wrong, and you're gonna have to switch it up. If you did screw it up, no big deal. This is basically just making a connection here. So if you screwed this whole thing up, all you have to do is cut these ends off, and you can actually crimp them together with a butt connector if you wanted. But if you did it right, you should be able to plug it in and unplug it, and those wires will be nice and secure in there. You're gonna be left with 1 orange wire with that short stubby connector on it. Where you pulled that orange pin out of your factory connector here, you're just gonna wanna stick this right back in there, in that same spot. All right, now that we got that wire pinned up where it needs to be, we'll put the lock back in. Make sure that wire is still in there. This connection is done. These wires here are your interior auxiliaries. They don't have heat shrink on there, but your kit does include some heat shrink. Technically, all you have to do is really just wrap it with some electrical tape, unless you're going to use it. But just wrap it with some electrical tape until it's ready to be used, and you can actually just tuck that on the side until you're ready to use it. All right, before we remove the glove box, we can go ahead and plug our connector back in. And basically, once you kind of get them close together, you start to push a little bit, you'll see that connector just wants to suck those 2 together. Once you have that connected, we can pop that back into the side here. And we'll go ahead and pull this glove box off. All right, so now we need to remove the glove box, which is pretty simple. On the side here, you have a arm. It's like a stopping arm. Basically, you pull from the bottom upwards and outwards to remove the little arm that's on the side. And then up top here, if you look underneath there, it's probably hard to see. There's a little plastic flap that you just have to flex up and out of the way. Now we can run the main feed for our switches here up behind the glove box. So where all these wires are, this is basically what you're going to zip tie it up to. All right, now as we pull this harness up in here, you want to be mindful of where the rest of your wires are, and you want to make sure that you're not going to pull anything really tight and you're going to have wires exposed anywhere. So I'll just kind of rest this to where I feel comfortable that's going to sit and not block anything else. And we can take this where all of our CAN connection wires are up here. You can just kind of zip tie it right on those existing wires, and that'll keep it nice and tight. All right, now we can pull the HVAC controls out and remove the center stack. All right, to remove the HVAC controls and your push button start switch, literally it just pops out. There's some retaining clips in there. That's all that's holding this whole panel on. And you can unplug the two plugs, set that aside. Now for this panel, there is a single Phillips screw right in the center here. I want to take that guy out. And just like the HVAC control, the rest of this is just retaining clips. Although feels a little tighter than that HVAC control. All right, and from here we can unplug all of our cigarette lighter plugs, the media hub plugs, just basically taking everything out of here so we can remove this whole panel. Unplug your USBs. And then you have a pretty big harness here with a security tab on it. So just push that red tab over, and then you can slide this big connector right off. All right, and now we're left with the pocket exposed that we have to remove. And I left out that we do need a 5.5 millimeter socket, or 7/32 will work to remove these. Sometimes they're 7 mils. Our panel has 7/32, go figure. We will pull all these 7/32 that are holding this pocket in, and we need to reuse all of these so don't lose them. Remove our pocket and grab our replacement pieces. And these will only fit one way. So once you have those in place, we can put all those 7/32 back in. All right, we'll snug these down. All right, and if you did everything right, yours should look like ours. So now we're ready for the last connection point here. So from here, we have our center console ready to go. We need to run these into our center stack area here. From behind the glove box, shouldn't be too bad to get this wiring harness pulled right through. Kind of working it around that AC vent in there. And that's actually what they give you the foam tape for, is you can go around your wires and protect that AC vent. We're gonna zip tie up everything pretty good, so I'm not really worried about that foam tape right now. For our last connector, and this connector here, let me grab my flathead, pin lock in here. Ours came with it in the open position. I know sometimes they come and they're pressed down. You're not going to be able to get your wires in if this white connector is collapsed. So if yours is pressed down like that, there's two grooves on the back here. You can just get a little flathead or a pick and kind of pop that up, and yeah, that's all you really need. You don't have to pull it out. Once you have it in that position, you're ready to insert all your pins into this connector. We may put a picture of it on the screen here just so you can see where each one goes, but basically on the back side of your connector here, it's actually numbered. It's really small. Basically, whenever they're referencing a number, you're just going to count over. So this would be the number 1 pin, this would be the number 5, 6, 10, and everything in between. If you see, it's actually 2 and 8 that are not grayed out, but we're not using 5, 2, and 8. So there's 3 pins that we're not using on here. We only have 7 wires to input into this connector. Red in pin 1, brown orange, pin 3, brown violet, pin 4, brown white, pin 6, brown gray, pin 7, orange is 9, and black is 10. They use abbreviations for everything. There's a little notch in there. So it really will only fit one way. Also, this connector is sealed. So there's a, probably kind of hard to see, there's a silicone seal inside there. So when you're pushing your wires in, you're going to feel that silicone seal. You're basically just pushing it right through it. So we'll start off with number 1, which is red. Push it right in, and you hear it click. It doesn't pull back out. You made a good connection. So we'll skip over to number 3 is brown and orange. So we'll find brown with the orange stripe, and that'll go into our number 3 position. Number 4 is brown with violet. We skip over pin 5, we'll move on to pin 6, and that is brown white. And make sure you look at the brown white good, because the brown gray is pretty similar to the brown white. So just make sure that you're getting the right brown white before you push it in there. And also probably take note as the pins are reversed. So putting the ones on the top row in a certain way with that notch on the top, you're going to want to flip it upside down for the bottom. It's the little groove is in the opposite position for the bottom row. Brown gray is number 7. Then we skip over number 8, and number 9 is orange. Then number 10 is black. Alright, now that we got all our wires pressed in, secure, and they're locked in, we can take the white little tab that push that back down. Our connection is done. All we have to do is reassembly now. Alright, now that we got our harness all completed, we can go ahead and reinstall all the panels that we previously removed. Alright, so when reinstalling your HVAC panel, is pull out your knee bolster panel, just this top clip here, just because there's a portion here that kind of fits right behind that panel. Just makes it a little easier to pop in place. Stuff the wire back into that hole a little bit. Alright, pop that back in. Alright, let's put the glove box back on. Alright, we'll throw our glove box back in. Just kind of rest that bottom portion in there, lift up the flap in the back, and then we can attach our arm. And now we'll move on to the kick panel here. We'll throw this back in. If you didn't already, make sure that you reconnect all your wires and your clips and everything, push it all out of the way. Make room for the kick panel that's going to be reinstalled here. And again, like I mentioned earlier, we have a couple of wires on here that you're not going to have on your Jeep. You're just going to have this main door harness. These are prototype harnesses that we have, so that's something else for me to plug in before I put the kick panel all the way in. Alright, your door harness, once you start to pull those together, your clip will start to move, and just follow through and pull that clip all the way down, and that'll secure your clip. And we can push this back into place, the door stop back over the hook, and we can cover all these wires up. Alright, let's move back to under the engine bay. Alright, and lastly, under the hood, we want to reconnect our grounds that we removed. And the 2 grounds that we removed earlier. Alright, now you're just going to be left with your auxiliary wires. We tuck these on the side until we're ready to use those, and put our fuse cover back on. Alright, now we can fold our hood down. Alright, now all we have left is to fold our hood back down. That pretty much completes the install. Keep in mind when you go to hook up your auxiliary wires, if you pop any of the fuses, they're on that main harness that's ran over the engine. So all the fuses are located on there. All right, now that the install is complete, all we need to do now is run the OBD Genie programmer and get those switches activated. Now we're ready to plug this in. We have to turn our vehicle into the run position and plug it in, and we'll wait to see the green light show up. All right, and that pretty much wraps up the install. It's a really quick install. You're looking at probably about 2 hours. If you're not very mechanically inclined, give yourself a little bit more time. Yeah, this is a great option, alternative for the aftermarket switch world. This OEM switch seamlessly integrates with factory panel, giving you 4 auxiliary buttons that you can control your aftermarket lights, even interior CB radios or walkie-talkies. It's a really good feature, really good option to have. All right, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and check us out at infotainment.com for upgrades like this and more.